Hey cats, what's happening? Yesterday was my wife's celebration of life, and what a time it was sharing with family and friends. Beautiful time. Family's still here with me over the weekend, so life is still good. Still enjoying it. But I thought today I would dedicate this video to my wife Val and her passing. If she was here, she'd be sitting right here saying, hello, beautiful people.
Hey, beautiful people.
Well, she's still here in spirit. Of course, if she was here, she wouldn't stand for the celebration at all because she was never about herself. It was always about everybody else, about what she could do to give and not to take. She had a very big heart. Was a very giving person. Now you got to know, when I first met, one of the first times that I really got to know Val, we were on a group motorcycle ride to Washington D.C. and she happened to be riding with somebody else, and the guy she was riding with, he was a novice rider. He was a terrible rider. And she knew that, and so that, like, the first time we stopped for fuel and a cup of coffee, she quickly approached me and said, I am feeling very uncomfortable riding with him, and I'm actually fearful for my life. I don't want to die on this trip. Could I possibly ride on the back of your motorcycle? Well, at the time, I had been going through a divorce, and I had taken the back seat off of my motorcycle because other women were wanting to go on rides with me, and so I took the back seat off, and I would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't give you a ride. I don't have a back seat." So I told Val the same thing. I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't have a back seat," and she said, "That's all right. I'm riding on the fender." I said, "Well, it's not going to be very comfortable." She said, "I'm riding on the fender." I said, "Okay." She said, "I've watched you ride. You're a professional rider, and I know I'll feel safe with you, and I would just rather, you know, make it home alive." She rode all the way to Washington, D.C., and all the way back home again on the back of my bike on that fender. Now, if you know anything about the motorcycle culture and you've ever seen a woman riding on a fender without a seat, you know that's one special lady. I often teased her about being no CD. She kept a very clean house, and she had a very tight schedule about that. I mean, every day we went through our routines of housework, and I was expected, with my series of duties that I was assigned to do. This kitchen was her pride and joy, though, and one of her favorite things was this gas range, which she kept spotless and polished. It still looks brand new, because every day she would inspect it, and a lot of times I would hear, "Did you use this stove?" "No, I didn't use it." "Well, I'm seeing spots here. How'd these spots get on here?" "I don't know. They must have splattered from something." And she'd be with her Windex and her polish and, cleaning anything off of there so that it remained looking like the day that we bought it. I was afraid to cook on there, to be honest with you, but all kidding aside, she loved to cook. She would go on the internet and find recipes, and she'd say, "What do you think about this recipe?" And I'd say, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." And so, she'd make a list, and when we went grocery shopping, we'd buy what we needed to create that recipe. And a lot of times they were very good. In fact, she would print them off and compile them. She put them in these folders, so she had all of her recipes up here that she printed off of the internet, and some of them we would repeat quite frequently, and some of them not so much because after we made them the first time, although they were delicious, it was just too much involved, too much work, and we like to keep it simple. But we had a few recipes that we really enjoyed doing. She liked to cook though, and I like to cook too. I like to help her. And a lot of times she would accuse me of trying to push her out of the way and take over when I was just trying to be helpful. You know, she was very, very slow and methodical about chopping vegetables or onions or something like that. And a lot of times I'd say, no, let me do that. And I'd be like, chop, 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 chop. And I could chop it up in 30 seconds where she would be sitting there for 10 minutes working on the same thing. And she'd get frustrated if I tried to take that job away from her. But yeah, she liked her cooking. And when we were done, everything had to be cleaned up spotless again. You had to wipe the counters down. You had to clean the sink. You had to run the dishwasher. So, there was a routine for everything. She was a very routine person, though. Very hardworking, very driven. And she often liked to come up with lists of things that needed to be done. So there was always a honey-do list for me to complete. And a lot of those things were almost out of the question as far as time or money. But she kept them on that list anyways, and she kept pointing it out to me. This is going to have to be done one of these days. You're going to have to do this one of these days. Yes, dear. I'll get to that. A lot of people remember her as being unfiltered or, speaking what was on her mind. And she never did that out of spite or to hurt anybody. She never meant to hurt anyone's feelings. She just spoke for what she felt was right. For she wanted to speak the truth, and she wasn't afraid to say it. Like I said, she didn't say it in a spiteful way, but it's just the way she was brought up. It was the way she was raised. Not only was she really particular about the indoors, but she was particular about the outdoors too. Everything had to be immaculately landscaped, beautiful flowers everywhere, and her garden was her pride and joy too. And there wouldn't be a weed in this thing. Now I've got it fairly weed free, but that wouldn't be acceptable for her. She would spend a day out here on her hands and knees and pull every single weed out of this garden till it was perfect. And she took a lot of pride in that. I loved mowing the grass too. I was always kind of amused. I mean, she loved riding on the tractor, but before she could get on the tractor, she would have to get the push mower out, and she would have to hand mow around every obstacle, so that when she got on the tractor, she wouldn't have to cut in around things. And so she would spend hours out here just with that push mower, just going around and around, making sure everything was all trimmed up nice. Then she would get on the tractor and mow. The thing that had always irritated me about that was she didn't have any rhyme or reason. She would just go willy-nilly all over the place, and no patterns or anything, and blowing grass into the driveway gravel and blowing grass into the landscape beds. And I never complained. I was just happy that she was happy. You could tell that she genuinely loved doing that, and that made me happy. So I didn't complain. At least my lawn was getting mowed. And, what was the harm? Now, when she first moved out here, she made it clear to me that she was a city girl and not a country girl. She said she had always lived in the city, and she liked all the conveniences of the city, and she wasn't too happy with being out here in the wilderness. But that didn't take her long at all, and she warmed up to this place. And then her mind completely changed to where she said, I would never go back and live in the city again. This country life is for me. She adapted to it so quickly. She learned a lot about about nature, and She liked to feed the animals. She liked to feed the birds. And you'd think with my career in the park system that I would know all the birds and everything. But I'd look out back and I'd say, hey, look, there's a red-headed woodpecker. And she'd look and go, no, that's not a red-headed woodpecker. That's a red-bellied woodpecker. And the one over there is called a hairy woodpecker. I'd be like, wow, my wife's smarter than me about nature. She picked up on it. She loved the animals too. I mean, at one time she fed a possum. Now, most people would see a possum as one of the most ugliest creatures. And not to her, it was just the cutest little thing. And she'd put cat food out for it, and the thing would come up every evening and eat its dish of cat food. She called it Petey Possum. She also had all the squirrels and chipmunks named that would come up on the porch, and including some of the birds that were regulars that would come every day. So, yeah, she really became a country girl and a lover of animals. I always said the animals kind of knew her, and they were drawn to her. They knew that she. I called her the animal lady, because the animals kind of knew who she was. Whenever we'd go on a walk, and somebody would come down the trail with their dog on a leash, you'd see that dog's tail start wagging, and it would get all excited, and I'd say, oh boy, they know the animal lady's coming. And I'd tell her, I said, be careful, that dog might snip at you, it might not be friendly, but she didn't care. She'd walk right up and pet the dog. And the dogs were always so receptive, their tails were wagging. They knew that she was kind to animals and that she loved animals. And that's how we ended up pretty much with a house full of cats, because we'd have these stray cats come into the property, and she'd say, you have to trap that cat. We're going to take it and get it spayed and neutered, and then we're going to release it to the wild. So we'd go take it, get it spayed and neutered, but then at that point she'd say, well, we can't release it to the wild. Let's just bring it in the house. And so we ended up with all these, house cats, which I still have a couple of them today. She liked to go on the walks, though, and hike, and she didn't like to go in the same place all the time. It was always trying to find a new trail or a new park or a new place we could explore and walk. And we'd walk regularly and really put in the miles. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for us to be able to walk 6 miles at a time and see some things that we had never seen before. One of her favorite places to go, though, was we'd go up to Lake Erie, which was probably close to an hour drive from here. But we went up to a place called Huntington Beach, and you had to walk down this big, long series of concrete stairs that went down to the beach, because it kind of sat up on a bluff, and the beach was all sandy gravel. And you could walk along the shore down there, and I think there was probably all total maybe a quarter mile of beach there that could walk, maybe a little more. And you could find the beach glass. And so we'd go up there all times of the year, even in the wintertime we went up there. And you could walk along there and pick up pieces of the polished glass that had been tumbled in the sand over the years. And we'd have a little Ziploc bag. We'd collect them, put them in there, and bring them home and use those for hobbies and crafts or whatever. So she really loved doing that. I mean, sometimes she would just sit down in the gravel with a stick and just dig in the gravel and find her pieces of beach glass. It was like hunting for gems, hunting for treasure, and it was so relaxing. She loved doing that, though. And then usually when we went up there, there was a couple places that we knew had, the fish dinners, the Lake Erie perch or whatever. So we always had to stop and get ourselves a fish dinner while we were up there. As far as her hobbies went, though, she had many. She liked her hobbies, and she liked me to be involved in those too as much as I could. At one point she was into jewelry making, beadwork. And I helped her with some of that. We actually made some jewelry out of the beach glass that we collected, sold some of it, and gave some of it away as gifts. She got me into rock painting at one time. The hobby where you pick up odd-shaped rocks, and then you paint them with acrylic paints. Some of those rocks we've kept in here. Here's one that she painted. They got a little tent on there, and it says relax. She painted some mountains, the moon in the background, some pine trees, and a little campfire. For a short stint there, she was into making soap. We bought all the equipment and the ingredients to make our own homemade soap, which a lot of times we would take our crafts to, a craft fair or a flea market or something where we could set up a table and sell her stuff. One of her favorite things to do was crochet. I mean, she loved crochet. I can't tell you how many times I spent at the craft store while she was walking up and down through the yarn aisle, and I'd have to go find, some other things of interest to look at and just wander around until she was ready to go, and she'd usually come out of there with an armload of yarn. She'd find the projects online, searching for different things that she could crochet, and once she found a pattern that she liked, she would work on that and just be in her own world. And if she got, she got halfway through say she was making a shawl or a scarf or something, and she got halfway through the project and she found out that she made a mistake, yeah, she'd rip the whole thing out and start over again. It had to be perfect. She finished so many projects that even today I have like Rubbermaid bins full of hats and scarves and baby blankets and shawls and just everything that you could make out of yarn. She made dishcloths and towels and all kinds of things. But she made so many things we just couldn't sell them all, and it wasn't an easy thing to sell either. So I still have all those things, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I certainly can't toss them out, so they'll be donated somewhere, I'm sure. If not, maybe somebody will want to buy a baby blanket set or something. I don't know. But I literally have closets full of crochet things. I have drawers full of crochet things, cupboards full of crochet things. She had bought so much yarn, so many projects, so many different crochet needles, all different sizes and shapes. So, yeah. She was even into quilt making at one time. I bought her a nice sewing machine, and she made a couple of small quilts that were very nice. But she really liked her hobbies. I miss her so dearly, though. She was one of the best things that ever happened to me. She changed my life, and she gave me such a wonderful life. She loved me so much, and I loved her back in return. Our relationship was beautiful, and I don't think it could ever be replaced. Rest in peace, my dear. Rest in peace.